I will then go ahead and introduce you. All right, everybody. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our third week together, and this is the first time we've actually kind of gotten together in the same virtual space. So I am super thrilled to get to see all of you and hear some of your thoughts. But I'm very excited to really kind of share some details of this. And up to this point, I've held 6 of these live Zoom guest sessions with subject matter experts, covering a wide variety of topics from firefighting use of SUAS to advanced air mobility. Today, I am super thrilled to introduce you to our first unmanned maritime subject matter expert for the series. Jimmy Board is the Senior Manager of Business Development at Liquid Robotics, a subsidiary of Boeing with their autonomous systems portfolio. In that role, Jimmy manages defense, research, and commercial accounts for Liquid Robotics' Wave Glider Unmanned Surface Vehicle, or USV. Jimmy's background's in systems engineering, and he retains a role in the company as a conduit between business development and engineering, helping to align Liquid Robotics' product roadmap with customer use cases across industries. Jimmy previously worked at General Dynamics and 3 Phoenix, now Ultra Maritime, and has a history of unmanned system support on the US Navy's Knifefish and UISS programs, as well as programs in cybersecurity and acoustics. He received his bachelor's from Vanderbilt University in mechanical engineering and his master's from Georgia Tech in aerospace engineering with a focus on advanced systems design techniques. Welcome to the class, Jimmy.
Happy to be here. Sorry to have a minute or two of technical difficulty there. Let me share the screen and hopefully that one goes much smoother. Let's go screen 2 here. Let's get everything put in the right spot. All right. So so today I'm going to try to run you through kind of what the Wave Glider USV is. And since Dr. Terwilliger asked, kind of a few slides on the maritime domain itself. I don't mean to be an ambassador for an entire domain of expertise, but I can at least try to throw out some talking points and see where that takes us for the evening. And then, I will open it as quickly as I possibly can and get out of the way and see what kind of questions you guys have. My least favorite slide, and it's been covered to some degree already, but this is kind of my background. Really, I kind of lucked into this. I know one of the base questions is, how did I get into unmanned systems? My second day on the job, I was thrown to a proposal basically to the sharks for the Royal Australian Navy, C-1778, which was kind of a big integrated mine hunting. I know there was a SEAL delivery vehicle involved in it. It was several different systems coming together into a larger architecture. And yeah, I was 2 days out of grad school. So I came in and they sent me down and I was like, what do we do here? I don't even know what we do in this building. So that was a great way to learn exactly what General Dynamics does here in North Carolina. From there, I worked on Knifefish, which is the mine hunting UV program for the US Navy. Spent over a year working the proposal for UISS, which is a mine sweeping USV. And I think that expertise is really why Liquid Robotics came calling in 2017. And the guy that's currently the CEO actually came from General Dynamics at the same location. So kind of a small community that will kind of call again once you've been exposed. Since getting to Liquid Robotics, I kind of started as a systems engineer in the sales focus. And since then, I've kind of just grown into an account leadership role and now cover most of our business and DoD research and commercial. And we're about 75-25, I'd say, 75% DoD, 25% commercial and research. And there's a little bit of a misnomer because a lot of the research is funded by ONR and NRL and entities like those. So even a lot of our research partners are funded by DoD. And then we reorged in 2019 to look a little bit more like Boeing. So at least they kind of understood our org structure to some degree when they acquired us. So they had to stand up a systems engineering group as part of that. So I helped out with that since I was kind of well suited to do so. So that's me, and this is what I pedal on a day-to-day basis, the Wave Glider USV. What is it? What's the value proposition? So it's basically a float connected by a rigid umbilical to a sub, and the sub is actually the bread and butter, the differentiator for our platform. So basically the difference in amplitude of wave motion at the surface and 8 meters down where the sub is basically gliding through, that's what propels our vehicle. We capture that mechanical energy, and we don't actually need electrical energy to move ourselves forward or any sort of gas engine or anything like that. We have a little prop on the back of the sub just to get us out of a heavy current or something like that. But for the most part, we're propelling ourselves with that mechanical energy capture. The float is about the size of a longboard, so a lot of people just call us the sensor surfboard. I'm cool with that. And then a mission-ready system weighs about 200 kilograms, just to give you an idea of how large it is. And the whole so what, like why is this neat? Basically because we're capturing mechanical energy, and there's a lot of that in the ocean, we can be out there for months at a time. At first, we were basically hampered by how long it took barnacles and stuff to grow on the platform. We've got a nice anti-biofouling coating on the vehicle now, so we're basically limited by mechanical wear and tear items at this point. We have unrivaled survivability in rough seas, though we do have some competitors that are catching up with us. You'll see a picture of a sail drone later that was in a heavy hurricane that got a lot of news this season. But we've been out, we've survived winters in the North Sea, sea states 6, 7, 8 for sustained periods of days to weeks, staying on mission while dealing with 8-meter seas. And the whole value proposition is seabed to space connectivity. We can talk to things that are underwater. We can talk to things on the surface, in the sky, and in space. So whatever you need to connect, if you put a wave glider there, we can basically cross domains on your behalf. A few more speeds and feeds for the platform itself. We like to operate in about 15 meters of water, so you need bathymetry to be in your favor. We are not exactly a littoral asset, we're more of a blue water asset. That said, it sounds like it would be very hard to navigate, but we can actually keep a watch station within about a 30-meter radius watch circle. And we have a nice bow tie pattern that we can follow on top of anything we need to talk to at the seabed. We are extremely slow, so we capture that wave motion, but it does kind of hamper us to some degree from a speed perspective. So we are not a tactical asset per se. You're not going to have something happen and then speed a wave glider into the area. You're going to have to put us there ahead of time or find something faster to deliver us into the operating area. We've got 5 areas you can mount payloads. You can go mount something on the top of the float, in the float, under, or you can now do sub, or we can actually tow from the sub. So we're extremely slow, but that wave motion capture is actually a high torque motion capture capability. So we can actually tow things that are heavier than the wave glider itself, which is kind of a nice differentiator. And I guess the one item that keeps changing kind of every year, almost in a kind of Moore's Law manner, is the solar collection capabilities. We just moved up to 75 watt rated panels, and we've got 3 of them on board, so we're at 225. That's changed 2 or 3 times since I joined the company in 2017. So that's one that continues to improve as time goes on. This is the company in a single slide. We made this for a trade show, and it's just kind of stuck. But this is how the company has basically matured over about 12 to 13 years at this point. So we first actively deployed for missions in about the 2009 timeframe. Between then and the acquisition by Boeing at the end of 2016, there was a ton of development of different payload capabilities, kind of evaluation of different ConOps, basically building up the use cases for the wave glider platform. And then, upon acquisition and, for a few years thereafter, is basically validating those ConOps and kind of scale deployments. You've got a great shot there of about 10 wave gliders for our Japanese Coast Guard customer. They basically run wave gliders 24/7, 365 for weather monitoring all around the Japanese islands. And then ConOps growth, we're still evaluating new use cases. And I think really the industry is still kind of waking up to the use cases to some degree. Things that we've been doing for nearly a decade are all of a sudden hot topics again. The hurricane monitoring example is a great one. We've been in hurricanes for over a decade. And that's all of a sudden a hot topic that garners a lot of news. So the industry is kind of catching up with the leadership status. So a few quick things here. Over 2 million nautical miles traveled. Because we're so slow, that's about 2 million hours on the water too. We've manufactured 500 vehicles. I mentioned the extreme seas, and then fleet operations by the US Navy, Japanese Coast Guard, Aramco, and a few other folks. Kind of our multi-mission capabilities, skipping over the middle there to some degree. ASW, we're a very quiet platform, so we can listen to things, be that the original purpose of the platform, which was to listen to whales off of the big island of Hawaii, or to things shaped like whales that just happen to also be in the ocean. Because we're an unmanned system, the 3Ds, dull, dirty, dangerous, do play for us as well. So danger close test range operations, we're a great collection asset that can be there during terminal phases of interesting things that might be happening. And I mentioned gateway communications. That's just kind of our buzzword for the ability to connect seabed to space. And then we've got a few others that are kind of DoD focused. We have configurable ISR capabilities, and then just the ability to collect information about the ocean. We can do a Doppler current profiler, conductivity, temperature, depth, and then a dissolved oxygen capability, fluorometry. There's several different METOC payloads that you can basically put onto the waveglider, meteorological and oceanographic. Kind of talking to where we've been, this is another great kind of like just single shot of the history of the company. We've basically been all over the world. I'm not going to give you guys too much of a salesy pitch today, but if I ever have to go to any specific country and talk about the waveglider, the first thing that always gets asked is, does it work in my waters? And this is basically the slide that we can use to prove that we've actually been there before, and then we can pull up the mission information. So kind of a pause for a second there. I've talked really fast. If there are questions, they're focused on liquid robotics, kind of the use cases for the waveglider. Don't hesitate to jump in. No harm in stopping me as I'm kind of running through the pitch here. But the last two slides are kind of more maritime domain focused, kind of broaden the aperture beyond liquid robotics and the waveglider.
Hey, Jimmy, can you guys hear me?
All right, hang on, let me turn you up real quick. All right, try again.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I was curious, you said something about your ISR. What type of ISR do you guys do?
It's, broadly speaking, it's all over the place. It depends. So we can do different modalities of collection. We can do kind of radio frequency, just kind of listening out there to what's going on. About 5 years ago, we did ADSB. So basically we were listening to aircraft flying over, and we were actually using that to patch holes in the ADSB network over the Northern Atlantic. And then, technically, acoustics falls into ISR as well. So we can do kind of the undersea as well as, in the air stuff.
That's what I was getting. I was curious if you do above and below and the surface. You pretty much answered my question.
Anybody else? All right, I'll plow through. So the maritime domain, and these are just kind of my thoughts. So I didn't put the hilarious disclaimer of this is Jimmy Board's thoughts, not Boeing or Liquid Robotics. But UUVs really led the way here, and they are much more mature than surface vessels. There's a ton more deployed. They are more widely used in actual operations. Be it for their covert nature or just the fact that it's the first thing that folks thought to do. But USV is catching up to some degree. We've got a lot of competitors that are now out in the wild. Sail Drone is a great example. I think they just closed a Series C for $100 million in funding. So it is an an area of the market that is growing in focus and in number of companies that are there fighting for a slice of the pie. I know there's hot topics like unmanned logistics, the idea of the unmanned container ship that are still kind of a long way off, and we'll kind of touch on that in a bit. But I know you guys talk about UAVs a lot. So similar to that market, the USV and UUV markets are filling out with different size classes, and they're starting to get, demarcated and differentiated by how large they are, to overgeneralize. You've got XL UUV is another Boeing product that's, I think the base platform is a 70-foot long submarine, and that's before they put any payload modules inside of it. So, you're nearing 100 feet long for an unmanned submarine. And then the USV market space, the US Navy started the LUSV program, which is close to the size of a ship. I think it technically would classify as a corvette. And then they have the MUSV program, which is a little bit smaller, maybe in the 50 to 70-foot class. And technically the wave glider, I think, counts as extra small USV in US Navy parlance. But there's definitely a player in every size class there now, whereas that wasn't always the case. And then broadly, maritime does lag behind the aerial domain in regulations. When I was at Georgia Tech in the 2010 timeframe, there was already an FAA project putting UIS into the NAS, and that's been ongoing basically for the entire decade. And there is nowhere near that level of thought and dedication into what to do with surface vessels to basically inject them into the maritime domain in a safe manner. There's been a few that have tried. It's just not uniform as it seems to be for UAS, at least in the United States. I know that there's a few that have come out recently. So the Coast Guard does have pole regs. And when I was working UISS, those were a large series of requirements for that platform. But it's not universally applicable. So the wave glider does not have to comply with pole regs. And the joke that I've always heard, I've never been able to confirm it, is that we're technically flotsam in the eyes of the Coast Guard. So, if you know anybody that's in Coast Guard regulations, let me know, and I can definitely ask. And then the UK has released just recently the Maritime Autonomous Ship Systems regulations, and started pushing those for opportunities that are coming out of the UK.
So is the use of this technology more bound by, say, individual treaties among nations and, member states of United Nations and organizations like that at the moment?
I almost want to say, like, my knee jerk is it's more the Wild West. Once you're outside of an EEZ, I think, the law of the seas, what have you. You don't want to operate within another country's EEZ, which it's 12 or 50 nautical miles off the coast, I forget. And we've had incidents that have made news where, one country would be operating a wave glider inside of someone else's EEZ and they would get mad. Scientific missions. So that's something I think there's been kind of case studies of where it's gone wrong. And I haven't seen a whole lot of multilateral cooperation yet for USV missions. I don't know if it's really garnering that much attention.
Great. Thanks for that.
Yeah. All right. I'll wrap my slides up with use cases and kind of opportunities. I mentioned the 3Ds that you guys are probably tired of hearing about. But bathymetric survey, that's been a huge topic that's got a lot of news lately. I think it was during the Trump administration. There was the agreement to basically map the seabed around the United States, basically our entire EEZ, which it's wild to think it hasn't been done yet. But that's one where they're trying to do that, I believe, in the next decade. And then anything that's a long-term oceanographic or meteorological data collect, something where you would normally, moor a buoy out in the middle of nowhere or in a scientifically valuable location. That's a great application for platforms like the wave glider, like Sail Drone. And so far we've seen that kind of be where NOAA and the research community has stepped in and started using the platforms. The image there to the right is actually the cow coffee lines. So it's basically I think 50 or 70-year-old agreement in California to survey the fisheries in these lines off of the coast of California. I believe by law it has to be done once a year at least. And you know, the folks at Scripps and NOAA have looked at this as a great use case for unmanned systems. Instead of having an extremely boring manned operation where they just go out and mow the lawn off California every year, why can't that be done by an unmanned system? And so far, the results have been pretty good. I think both wave gliders and sail drones have completed multiple transects over this past fishing season, and it's gone pretty smoothly. Seafloor geodesy and data exfiltration. That's kind of exactly square in what was called the gateway application earlier. So a lot of researchers that are basically looking at subsea seismic activity, they will drop to the seabed, extremely sensitive sensors, but they don't have any way to talk to anything unless you have a boat in the area. So they've started parking unmanned systems over those assets. And the idea there is, tsunami detection and early warning, or just, front end research for activity, tectonic activity out in the ocean. One that I think is going to grow a bit as offshore wind and energy kind of booms over the next decade is the passive acoustics monitoring for marine mammals. So it's something where regulations have changed drastically in countries around the world. The US is changing a little bit. There's still specific examples where regulation is extremely, rigid. And that would be around areas of known transport or migration of endangered species. But basically, before doing anything, before setting up any sort of offshore wind or energy installation, there's a lot of work that has to be done for site survey now, and finding pattern of life for marine mammals that may be passing through is also a piece of that puzzle. So being able to park something there for a long time and basically listen to whatever passes through, or using tag tracking to see what kind of tagged species are going through is also something that's garnering a lot of interest right now. Offshore asset inspection is one for the subsea community. So you'll see a lot of ROV activity and UUV activity. Basically, instead of having to have divers, and that's extremely risky operation from a man perspective, why not just send an unmanned system there? So a lot of ROVs are basically directed straight at that. And then there's a few like Houston Mechatronics where they actually have an ROV that turns into a UUV. So we're starting to see things kind of cross-pollinate. Wide area monitoring is another kind of really boring application normally. So search and rescue, I know that it made a lot of headlines years ago when I think it was the Malaysian flight that got downed in the Pacific. Bluefin Robotics had a full ocean depth capable Bluefin 21 that was doing side scan sonar surveys looking for the wreckage during that, and that made a lot of headlines. But that's one where UUVs could play a critical role there. And then you could park something over them to continue the mission. And then anything that's high risk, the ocean is extremely dangerous and very harsh. So storm tracking, saw that this year at a sail drone, and anything in the winter in the North Atlantic or anything in the Southern Ocean, just kind of automatically, let's throw something that's unmanned there instead of putting manned assets. It's a challenging environment to operate in at any time of year. And I notice now that there is a raise your hand function in Zoom. Oh my God. All right, we'll start with Charles.
Oh, hold on, Jimmy. So I'm gonna mediate the questions, and I've got a couple just to kind of lead in, and then what we'll do, I'll lead over to Charles and Stephen, and then I have a couple from the chat for you that I'll relay. So you mentioned in the design of the platform early on, in somewhat of a chicken versus an egg question, you were talking about how you're developing new use cases for the platform. When you did first develop this design, the Wave Glider, did you have an initial use case in mind, or was it more focused on the can we do it? There's the unique aspect of the mechanical propulsion, let's examine that, let's prove that out, and then we'll see if there's a functional use case after.
So ours is extremely clear. Our company has a very kind of funny, origination story. So we're based in Silicon Valley for now, and the company came out of a harebrained idea of a Silicon Valley millionaire who had a home on the Big Island of Hawaii near the humpback whale sanctuary. So he can see the humpback whales from his living room. We should all be so lucky, but he can't hear them. Darn. So he needed something to be able to pipe the whale songs into his living room where he could see the whales. And this is just a problem that required Silicon Valley millionaire money. So basically he needed a mobile buoy that could follow the whales around and listen to the whale songs. And that is basically the genesis of the wave glider. We are oversimplified to state that we're a mobile buoy. And, the silence of the platform plays into that marine mammal monitoring application, which is the entire reason we were created. And the funny story, the reason that we've gone down the path of a lot of defense applications is one of his neighbors worked at the Office of Naval Intelligence, saw what they were doing and was like, I think I know what else you can do with that.
Outstanding. Going into technical capabilities, you mentioned gateway communications on board. Do you have the capability to provide links for UAS and other airborne assets back to say a localized ship, making it effectively able to serve as a communication node as part of a larger mesh network?
Yes. So one of our Boeing brethren in situ, they make the Scan Eagle and the Blackjack. I think it's Group 3 and Group 4 UASs. So
2 and 3
had a ton of Scan Eagles that are legacy and don't have the ability to do beyond line of sight communications. So we basically put a high bandwidth SATCOM on the back of the wave glider, and we also put a line of sight radio on the wave glider, and we pretend to be the ground station that the Scan Eagle is used to talking to. And we basically lily pad their traffic back to shore over that high bandwidth SATCOM. We pretend to be that GCS. You can park us wherever you want your Scan Eagle to go. And we basically extend the range of the Scan Eagle from, line of sight to the endurance of the platform, basically opening the operating envelope.
I gotta say, I love that term, lily pad versus, usually we refer to it as daisy chaining, but I mean that is such an apt description.
We're very literal.
So just we also have some connection into in situ here at Embry-Riddle. One of the business founders is our former president, Dr. Stephen Sliwa. So he was one of our presidents, and then one of our former faculty, and he went on to work with Dr. Sliwa, and he's been one of our guest SMEs was Paul McDuffie. So it's kind of cool how this field is just so interconnected that even though we're talking different modalities and domains, there's still that interoperability and relationship that exists. I'm gonna just ask one more question, then I'll turn it over to the students because I know they're chomping at the bit. One of the challenges we have in this field is staying informed of developments, of breakthroughs, of advances, of what is the next generation, what are the capabilities, what are the things we need to know. What tools or resources do you use to stay informed, and what are some of the challenges you have from sifting through all that available material?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the second part there. It's time consuming trying to keep up. There's a reason that companies that are large enough have like competitive intelligence organizations and corporate strategy to do that kind of stuff. Though people joke and say they don't do anything. I personally try to keep up with. I found a few different places online. USNI news. There's a few others like Defense News. I try to avoid paywalls personally. Boeing does give me access to a few that get me past that. But that's usually, kind of a first step in seeing the big news that's going on. If you're, it's easy to follow folks that are talking a lot, I guess. So it's very easy to keep up with our competitors like Saildrone and others that have extremely active marketing departments. You know exactly what they're up to from a week-to-week basis and what they're working on. So kind of trying to subscribe to competitors, see what they're up to, what they're releasing, following news. And then, you know, I'm in BD, so I have to hit the trade show scene. And it's time consuming, but it is helpful to walk the floor and see what folks are trying to focus on, because just whatever they're focusing on is telling you kind of a lot about how they're reading the situation. So if everybody's, you know, hamming up their AI ML capabilities, maybe there's something to that. Maybe there are opportunities that they're seeing that you may be missing out on, that, you know, they need to be telling customers that they're good at that for some reason. There's always context there to pick up walking the show floor.
Outstanding. Well, now I'd like to, like I said, turn it over. Charles has a question. We'll follow it up with Stephen. And then I have, let's see, 3 questions from our chat. And then if anybody else has anything, just put your hand up and we'll go. So, Charles.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jimmy, for the presentation. My question, if you wouldn't mind, could you pull up the global map? Yes, sir. Thank you. So my question specifically has to do, has to deal with the South China Sea. And without going to the high side, could you talk about some of the operations you conducted in that area, and what kind of, what was the reason for deploying the device in that area?
Yeah, so a lot of those missions, obviously I'm not putting up anything here that is in any way, shape, or form classified, so there is no worry there. All of these missions are either scientific or missions that came through our commercial system for piloting the wave glider, so there's no sensitivity associated with them. I've asked the same question joining in 2017, and a lot of it is South Korean and Indonesian partners that we had that were running scientific missions in that area. And I'll also add the data point that a young company is very stupid sometimes, and where they allow their customers to operate their unmanned system. So that, you know, early days of Liquid Robotics, South Korean and Indonesian partners doing science missions. I think there was a wave glider with a CTD on it from one of our South Korean partners that got captured early on in the company, and it was a huge international thing of like the U.S. is spying on China, but it says on it it's a South Korean asset, and it's got it's got a CTD on it. So, yep, there you go.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Stephen.
Sorry about that. I switched my screens around a bit. So, hey, thanks. And my question from here, you were talking about the fisheries on the West Coast, just off of California. Is the wave glider actually detecting biomass of the different fish species? And if so, how are they detecting, you know, the difference in various species of fish or marine mammals? You were correct on the EEZ. It's at 12 miles as well as territorial seas, but there are some places where those diverge. Up in the Bering Sea, there's an exclusive economic zone further out where most of the fishing fleet operates. And I see there were a couple operations way up north, North Pole bound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this specific one, I think right now for the Cal Coffee mission, we're just operating with a Vimco echo sounder. So I think it's tagged fisheries assets, but I would have to check with Scripps because they actually own the configuration of that one. To the capability, whether or not the wave glider can do it, it's been done, you know, with an actual echo sounder, like a multi-beam, I think like a Simrad EK80 or something along those lines. And so we differentiate biomass to some degree based on the frequency of the echo sounder. I think a lot of scientific research and scans like this are done at 38 kilohertz and 120. But I know that there are higher frequency operations, and I forget which differentiates between fish that have like a swim bladder and those that don't. Those do show up very differently. But I think we have a white paper or at least a use case that was presented by CFOS in the UK. And they basically can show the diurnal migration up and down the water column of a lot of different species based on where they're picking up that biomass reading.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Outstanding. Well, I'm going to read these three, and then I see Jim has his hand up. We'll go to Jim after I read these. So from William, how does the wave glider deconflict with local maritime traffic?
So when we're doing an operation, specifically, definitely in an area like in the US EEZ, we'll put out a local notice to mariners so that folks know that it's out there. And we do have a light on it. We used to have a radar reflector. And I saw that there's an AIS question as well. We have a passive AIS, so we receive and we actually have on board the vehicle an auto avoid capability. I know we're extremely slow, but if we do have a CPA violation, we will start to avoid whatever we're seeing that's coming at us. But yeah, that's in summary. The local notice to mariners is mainly what we use. And the folks off the Big Island of Hawaii in our test area, they usually can see the light if we've got it on. And the fishing boats are usually around the wave glider because it actually attracts a lot of fish. So
awesome. So you mentioned that you have a radar reflector. So that goes into Corinne's question. Is it easily picked up using common navigation and detection equipment such as radar for deconfliction?
not really. So our freeboard is about 2 inches, and some customers run it even lower than that. So the reflector is usually on a 1 meter mast to give you at least some height of eye. But beyond having a weather station on board the wave glider at that meter as well, that has LED lights on it, it's basically impossible to see. And I didn't include it, but we've got a classic slide that we always show, and it's the wave glider at 50 meters. And, you put it up on the screen and people are like, I don't see anything. And then you like circle it and they're like, oh crap, there it is. Our guys in Hawaii can't find them sometimes, even though they literally have a GPS lock on them and know exactly where it is.
Awesome. All right, Jim, I'll turn it over to you to ask your question.
Thank you, Dr. T. Hi, Jimmy. I had a question about your ability to process on board the vehicle. Do you have enough power and enough computing capacity to actually sense and then process and send process data off the vehicle?
We do. We don't often use it, to be honest. We do for kind of like ASW applications, but we've got basically, I'll oversimplify to a cell phone processor. It's an NVIDIA Tegra. I think it's got 192 or 256 CUDA cores of available GPU-based processing. So you can do extremely, pretty quick parallel processing on board the vehicle, which is usually pretty helpful for those applications.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions for Jimmy? Oh, okay. We have Daniel Lear.
Okay, am I up? Yeah. Oh, that just hit me. I was curious, since you've got an upper and a lower. Excuse me. If you got a wave line and sub below, and I'm looking at the map when you're out in like deep ocean and stuff, do you ever have any problem with like large marine life damage or anything like that?
Yeah, sharks do find them tasty every once in a while. We still haven't figured out like what causes that or what exactly, seasonality there is to that curve. But I think it was middle of September, we had 2 bites. A shark bit the thruster rudder on the back of a wave bladder owned by Dalhousie University in Canada. And then also Mbari off the coast of Monterey Bay had a shark bite as well. So it's been known to happen. It's pretty neat to some degree when you get a tooth back with the wave bladder, though it usually does. They do some decent damage when they take a piece out of it.
Well, you know, that was my next question. If you ever had one damaged so bad that you had to go out and repair it or anything, or...
Yeah, I think we've had bites that have actually justified going out and doing an emergency recovery. So it's happened before.
The reason I asked that was because I know you got two separate pieces, one at the water at surface and then one below, and then like whales and whale sharks and, you know, and different animals like this, you know, see us, hey, what is that? And come up and play with it.
Or we do attract fish, so maybe it's just a missed bite. Who knows?
Excellent. Olivia, you had a question?
Yes. Thanks, Jimmy, again for the presentation. I just had a quick question. If you could talk a little bit more about the type of equipment that do the hurricane hunters use it, or is it more of NOAA sending out the sailboats, or how is it being used in that area?
For hurricanes, so we've done in the past, I believe we actually contracted with National Weather Service. And I think we did that around the 2013 timeframe, and determined that wave gliders are a great deterrent for hurricanes. We can never actually be on the actual line that it was coming in on. Sail drones the same way. I think it's a direct contract into NOAA. And what they're doing is they're basically piping all of their data directly into storm trackers and capturing that for future use. And I think their novelty this year was that they were the first to actually breach a major hurricane's eye wall at the surface, and then take data and send back video from that.
Thank you.
I know living here in Florida, we'll take a bunch of them if they're, you know, the antidote for getting hit. Well, excellent. I wanna just follow up with a couple just professional development questions. I know you guys you're you know, looking for some new folks, and like to give get your thoughts on, you know, some specific knowledge areas, skills, abilities that you tend to look for in employees and collaborators.
Yeah. So I always lean towards systems just because it's what I came from and what I've spent most of my time doing. We're leaning heavily into the model-based engineering and model-based systems engineering kind of fronts that are hot topics right now. I know it's a big movement within Boeing and the autonomous systems organization. So they're trying to deploy it to the Orca program, to Wave Glider. I think In Situ is getting wrapped up into that as well. So hopefully it'll be all across the Boeing autonomous systems portfolio here pretty soon. Software engineering expertise, you know, we're evaluating right now whether we want to, you know, move to a variant that has something akin to ROS or something along those lines as a control system. Right now, we've got a very bespoke control system that was custom developed for the Wave Glider, and we're wondering if there's a bifurcation in the future. So that's kind of a potential area of expertise that, you know, if you're a software developer, might be useful for us moving forward. And then, you know, kind of the standard, we're, you know, always trying to basically innovate on the mechanical engineering front and electrical engineering. I know that my boss would kill me if I didn't mention low power architectures. You know, we are out there all alone for months and we only have the sun to depend on. If it's a rainy day or if the mission is going to hurricanes, you may not be getting a whole lot of solar insolation for quite some time, but you're still wanting to collect data. You want to be on mission. So how do you minimize hotel power for the platform? How do you optimize kind of efficiency of power distribution to different sensors? That's kind of a question that we're always dealing with.
Just out of curiosity, can you discuss the battery chemistry that you use? Is it lithium iron phosphate? Is it lithium polymer?
This is I will, I will sound dumb here. I just know it's a standard off-the-shelf smart lithium-ion battery from Inspired Energy.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
Well,
we
that's
basically
perfect.
slam those together. We have 10 to a pack, and I believe our guy, North Star there for design is basically transportability. We wanted it to be able to go into cargo air transport.
Perfect. And then my final question, what professional organizations, certifications, or even skills development activities do you recommend students explore if they're going to look at a career in unmanned maritime systems?
Gotcha. Yeah, so I'll again be a homer for systems engineering. I love NCOSY. I think that's a great organization to join, and I think they also just kind of have a lot of different areas of expertise and topics that they explore. I will admit I've fallen out of favor, as I've gone into business development and left the engineering realm, but that's a great one to be involved in. I feel like IEEE is always the correct answer to some degree. They have communities of practice in basically everything. So I've seen a lot of standards that are still IEEE standards for what we're doing. And then if you're going to go fully into the maritime domain, you can start to look into like Maritime Tech Society. AGU is actually a strong oceanographic organization as well. Obviously American Geophysical Union. So they do that in every domain. And that's been one of our biggest events that we attend. We do both the fall meeting as well as the ocean sciences meeting that's hosted by AGU. AUVSI touches on maritime. I've been to their show before. I guess kind of the experience you guys have dealt with, it's very heavily aerial focused. And the few of us that are there from the maritime domain, we know each other and we'll like pop over and like, hey, anybody talking to you today? No, okay. Yeah, so it's an interesting one to go to. I feel like that's probably one where you see a lot of the commercial grade, what is pushing the edge. So back to your earlier question about how do you see innovations, there's always kind of the weird out there and new that's being presented at AUVSI. It's a very kind of novel and interesting show to attend.
I'll mirror that. I often will refer to it as our Super Bowl. It's in the collective domain area. It's the biggest event for everything to get good exposure. Plus, I'm going to be helping with planning and development for the Orlando show next year. Next year, the Peninsula chapter is going to be providing some input, and we're going to have some events. So everybody who's looking to come down, let me know. Reach out. I will happily help connect you up. We're going to definitely have a Embry-Riddle alumni event with reception and beverages. So,
Cool.
well, excellent, Jimmy. I can't even tell you how much I really appreciate you coming into our class, speaking to us. It's been a thrill, a pleasure. Getting to hear just your insight and your thoughts on this domain has been wonderful. To the students, this is something kind of different. I have actually two classes in here. I have UNSY 501 and 502. I just want to reiterate to y'all that to receive credit for participating this week, I'm just going to ask you to submit a brief discussion post in the week 3 discussion area. For 501, that's going to be our UMV recovery. So just develop a brief entry that identifies you were here and describe how our guest's organization uses or has developed unmanned maritime technology to advance the field, and consider what innovations they've introduced or integrated into a design. And then with 502, that is going to be very similar, but it's also going to talk about maybe new technological development in IP, intellectual property, and potential protections that might be considered to safeguard innovations. And Jimmy, if you'd like to hear that, because it's a bit of a novel spin, I'm happy to share what our students come up with ways that you guys might look at future protections. Not that Boeing doesn't have that well covered, but
I was about to say there's an army of people within Boeing that do just that.
Sure are. but it's you know, given the edge of the technology that you guys are leading, it to me made a really good connection for us. So, and then with that, I just want to thank everybody for coming. If anybody wants to stay on because you have questions about your coursework, I'm going to stick around for a couple minutes, and I'm happy to. But otherwise, thank you, Jimmy, for joining us. Really do appreciate it.
And thanks for the time and questions, guys. It was great.